The critically acclaimed and commercially successful Witcher franchise proved that Polish developers can make good games that find an audience in the West. However, the franchise isn't the first series to emerge from Girl's homeland. Before the Wild Hunt's success and all those Game of the Year awards it has received, Polish gamers had something of an inferiority complex, to say the least. Sure, the games produced in Poland got some recognition and were even reviewed positively, but more often than not, they were middle-market titles that were far behind the competition in many ways. Polish gamers often praised and defended even the mediocre games because they were the ones helping put their country on the map of the video game industry. That, however, has changed recently, and Poland has nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to digital entertainment. Nowadays, Polish games are on par with the competition and enjoy quite a popularity without many people even knowing that they were made in Eastern Europe and not some renowned American studio. The progress of the Polish game dev wasn't something that happened overnight, and was actually a result of constant improvements and baby steps. Today, I want to take a look at some other Polish franchises, games other than The Witcher. The first Polish game to be, well, noticed by gaming journalists and Western customers was the PC-exclusive futuristic shooter Chrome from Techland, way before they were making zombie games like Dead Island or Dying Light. It wasn't by any means perfect, but it got recognized because of the nice visuals, big levels, and open-end gameplay. It is also worth mentioning that it was running on the so-called Chrome engine, made entirely by the studio, and the engine itself later supported other games from Techland like Call of Juarez and the aforementioned Dead Island. Over time, Chrome managed to even gain a cult following, and there were even plans for a sequel in 2006. Sadly though, the sequel was cancelled. Looking back at it now, the flawed game was too ambitious for its own sake, while some even called it a mediocre Halo clone. Despite not reaching the full potential of the concept, such a project gave Techland a lot of experience, which would soon help with their next releases. Nearly a year after Chrome's debut, another Polish game caught the gamers' attention, Painkiller from the team at People Can Fly. The game was in many ways a love letter to shooters of days past, and some fans of the title went even as far as to call it a spiritual successor of the legendary Quake. It wasn't revolutionary or groundbreaking, but it was a good, old-school, action-packed shooter. The game was both released for the PC and the original Xbox, which without a doubt helped its sales in North America. Sadly though, the Painkiller brand has been tarnished over the years, with expansions that left much to be desired, which is probably due to the fact that they were made by different studios. In 2012, the game got a PC remake, Painkiller Hell and Damnation, which a year later made its way to consoles. In the latest Painkiller, the series has returned to its roots, so to speak, because the game was developed by yet another Polish studio, Farm 51, who are currently working on the upcoming Get Even. And while the latest Painkiller was quite good, it wasn't as good as the series' debut. The Western shooter, Call of Juarez, was the next project from Techland that gained popularity outside of Poland. Despite having received mixed reviews, Ubisoft saw potential in the title and became the publisher for the PC version in North America and the Xbox 360 version worldwide. At that point in time, the game was a huge surprise for Polish gamers. Not only was it a Western in a time when Westerns weren't that popular, but it also got recognized by an international publisher known for such hit series like Splinter Cell or Prince of Persia. The game's sequel, Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, fixed some of its predecessor's flaws and was the first Polish game to be developed for the PlayStation 3. A few years later, in 2011, Call of Juarez The Cartel took us to a modern-day setting but failed to perform. The Polish Western franchise would have fallen into obscurity if it wasn't for Call of Juarez Gunslinger, released in 2013, which, despite being arguably the best game in the series, was a short title with a digital-only release that went largely unnoticed in the same year the start of the next console generation was about to happen. Techland has since abandoned the Western setting, but who knows, maybe the upcoming release of Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2 will bring back the gamers' love for the Old West and will cause Techland to reconsider bringing the series back from the dead after a longer absence.
The two tangos by the Jeep. Terminate them.
If you take a look at some of your favorite games throughout the years, you quickly notice that some of the best titles don't necessarily sell well, and vice versa. Sniper Ghost Warrior is probably the worst game on this list, but it's not the least popular. Before the Sniper series, the developer CI Games, or City Interactive if you will, were making bargain bin PC games. It might be hard to imagine, but those were the titles you could buy for less than $10 in your local newspaper shop. And having played some of them in my early years, I can confirm that they were most of the time crap. Despite the low quality of such numerous releases, the studio grew, self-published their games, and even published titles of others, and eventually got enough money to break into AAA gaming. Sniper Ghost Warrior was panned by the critics, but did surprisingly well with sales, clearing the way for a sequel and a third installment to be released soon. The Ghost Warrior series is probably so popular because of lack of competition, and sure, we have Sniper Elite, but the Superior series offers a different type of sniper gameplay. Next to that, the Ghost Warrior games looked good enough upon release to make a good first impression, and while focusing on quantity instead of quality in your business model isn't something to brag about, CI Games has now enough money and experience to make even a decent game, like for example Lords of the Fallen. In comparison to Sniper games, 2011 saw a release of a game that sold poorly but had great reviews. Bulletstorm from People Can Fly of Painkiller's fame was a crazy shooter with vulgarity and stylish action. The game featured a ragtag group of foul-mouthed mercs and focused on the kill with skill system, which gave us points for finding the most imaginative and brutal ways to dispose of our enemies. Despite being a great shooter, support from Epic Games, and being bundled with the beta of Gears of War 3 in some versions, the sales were anything but satisfactory. And that is partially because of the marketing and Epic Games itself, which focus on the immature jokes and vulgarity, marketing the game to edgy teenagers, claiming it to be the best effing thing ever. Soon before the disappointing launch, Cliff Bleszinski of Epic Games stated that the release of the game was moved closer to the launch of the much-anticipated Killzone 2 because, according to Cliffy himself, they wanted to kick Killzone's ass. Yeah, good luck. Apart from that, the game suffered even more from the influence of Epic, as not too long before the release, they insisted on removing co-op from the game. Let's just hope that the remaster of the title will give the game popularity it deserves. All in all, 2011 was a great year for Polish games. Apart from several others, we got Witcher 2 and the aforementioned Bulletstorm, but even Techland debuted their new franchise, the FPP zombie hack and slash, Dead Island. I won't go much into detail here because you've probably heard about the series. A few years back, zombies were all the rage, and what seemed like a safe bet was probably the studio's best investment, solidifying its position as second only to The Witcher CD Projekt Red when it comes to the Polish game dev. Dead Island didn't have a touching story as the trailers would have us believe, but offered fun gameplay, grinding and co-op, which made the experience that much more addictive. After the Dead Island Riptide expansion, Techland gave over the franchise to a different studio, but still wasn't done with The Living Dead, and in 2015 they gave us yet another zombie RPG, but this time with parkour and under a different name, Dying Light. Next to household names like CD Projekt Red, Techland, CI Games, and People Can Fly, many new Polish indie studios have been gaining traction recently, and who knows, maybe with more money and experience, in the near future they'll be able to challenge the position of the big fish. One of them is Flying Wild Hog, which recently caught our attention with a great sequel to the 2013 Shadow Warrior. The studio even bragged about getting a bad review from the politically correct Polygon site, proving that the style of their games matches their rebellious attitude. Of course, Poland is not only made up of big studios now, as there are even some indie teams that get recognized overseas. 11-bit Studios debuted in 2011 with Anomaly Wars on Earth, which played around with the concept of tower defense from the perspective of the attacker, soon followed with the depressing Last of Us-inspired This War of Mine. And it's not like indie games all have to be artsy 2D platformers, because according to Imagine Pro, they can thrill and look great, just like the first-person horror Collat or the recent original shooter Superhot. In the recent years, Poland quickly went from a position of an underdog to one of the fastest growing game devs in the world. And while as of now, the Witcher franchise is their #1 export when it comes to video games, that situation might soon change. Thanks for watching guys, keep it here at GamePressure, and I'll see you soon.